I think we forget, too, that there's different types of community.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is for me to have my people. A lot of times there's nothing in this for me. I am pouring myself out because there's a purpose.
You make friends because you know that if we're going where God is telling us to go, there is someone that needs you and someone that you need.
I got to the point where I was realizing I'm trusting myself too much in who I trust. And so I'm looking at clues and I'm thinking, because I'm hyper vigilant and I'm hyper observant, I'm trusting in my own wisdom for how I move, and I keep hitting a wall. It's still failing. And the Lord's like, yeah, because you're leaning on yourself. We won't succeed at community if we are unwilling to do the hard stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like, because the world's version of community isn't the community that God is trying to create. Because God's community is an image of himself, you know, the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. There's a unity and a oneness, a love, and Jesus is trying to create that. And I was reading this week through Matthew, just Jesus was trying to beat it over the head. Like, if they tell you to walk 1 mile, go another. I said, what? Like, you want me to go an extra mile? If they take the cloak, let them have the other cloak, turn the other cheek. He wants you to do the absolute most, because blessed are the peacemakers.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, I just realized, I'm like, you know what, Lord? I was reading it, I said, I can't do none of this without you.
That's right.
I literally can't do any of this without you. Yeah. And it's pushing me in the position to love these people that you want me to love, like love people that I don't like that, love people that don't like me.
Yeah.
You know, people who I keep serving, and it doesn't seem like it's producing the fruit that I prefer. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm laying down my life, I'm humbling myself, and they're rejecting me and all the things, like all the stuff. And it's just like, oh, this is what you go through with me all the time. Right. This is what my husband goes through with me. Like, it's like, this is Christianity.
Yeah.
No greater love is it than a man lay down his life for his friends. Right. And so I think until we are willing to go through the hard stuff, we will not experience the beauty that can be produced in community. But we need him to do it.
I saw that so clearly when my husband and I were about to get married. His mom and dad lived in Charleston, South Carolina, and he was an only child. They waited 13 years for him. And I loved his dad. His dad was just a character. But his mom was not thrilled that Barry was marrying me, and made it really clear. And after we got married, I remember saying to Barry, listen, I want her to understand, it's not like she's lost you, she's gained me, which was not apparently good news. So I said, listen, why don't you invite them to come and stay with us for, a couple of weeks, and just be together, just, have meals together, just go for walks together. So they came, and on day one, Barry was still sleeping. I got up, and she was in the kitchen, and so I was like, good morning, Mom. There's nothing. And I realized she was intentionally not speaking to me. And so I was like, if I've done something to hurt your feelings, please tell me. But I don't know what to do with this. Mm-hmm. And on the second day, she still wouldn't even acknowledge I was in the room. Mm-hmm. The second day, Barry said, listen, Mom, this is my home. This is my wife. Mm-hmm. You either have to be able to talk with us or go home. So she went home. Mm. And then I got pregnant with Christian. And at the same time, she was diagnosed with liver cancer and given 18 months to live. And this is while I'm traveling every weekend. And she called me one day. And I said, let me get Barry, because she never wanted to talk to me. And she said, no, I want to talk to you. I said, oh, yay. And she said, I've decided that for the next year, everywhere you go, I'm coming with you. And I'm like, yay. and I felt the Lord saying, Sheila, get out the way. Yeah. Because by then I had this little boy, it's her only grandchild. And she didn't like me anymore. On the road, she wasn't, I've never had somebody stand that close to me and literally yell in my face. But I felt the Lord saying, no, I don't want you to respond to how you've been treated. I want you to respond to how I've loved you. Wow. So, and then in the last, 3 months of our life, we moved in with them. And I took the night shift because I did better just during the night sitting up with her. And she was a Lutheran, and I would sit in bed with her and I'd sing through the hymn book. And then one night she said, if it was you, God would have healed you. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I know I've not made your life very easy. And she said, no, that's why God's not healing me. And I'm like, Mom, God does not love me one grain of sand more than he loves you. And it was the best 3 months she and I ever had.
Wow.
We talked, we cried together. She told me why she felt the way she felt. I remember the day when I said to her, because Barry and his dad did not want to acknowledge she was dying, even though she was literally dying. And I said to her, do you want to talk about what happens when you die? And you thought I'd have said, you want to go to Disneyland? She was like, yeah, get a yellow pad and a pen. The hymns she wanted, she wanted to wear my earrings from the wedding. She wanted a picture of Christian on the top of her casket.
Wow.
All this stuff. And it was such a picture to me of the way God loves when we just constantly, keep saying, nope, 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 nope. But the reward when you don't give up, the reward to keep pressing in. Because left to my own, I would have just said, you know what, forget it.
Yeah.
You don't like me, that's fine. I'm not that fond of you either. But underneath all her resistance was brokenness and fear and insecurity. And I have to say that by the time Eleanor passed, we were as close as a mother and daughter could have been. And I learned so much about that from her, from not being liked and realizing how much I'm loved. I think one of the ways to become a better friend, to become a better daughter, a better wife, a better sister, is the more we fall in love with God, the more we understand that the whole point of why Jesus came was he wanted to make it possible for us all to come to him. And so often when I'm walking through the airport, I'll find myself praying for random people who are kind of walking in front of me and walking past me, and kind of the weight of the world and so many. And it's easy to kind of shut down and just want to do your own thing and get home and be by yourself, or depending on where you work, maybe, you like your work, but there's that one woman, 2 desks over, and you like your church, but there's that one guy that always sings too loud. But there's something about the more we fall in love with God, the more we understand what's important to him. And I think that's what helps us to be better friends, to be loyal, to be true, to be honest. That's one of the best things, is when you get how much you're loved, you get to live transparently, which means you don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to hide. And if somebody has hurt your feelings, or something's not good, or you don't understand, you can sit down and say, hey, can we talk about this? Rather than, why didn't you? It changes the tone of everything. When the tone from heaven to our soul is grace, 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 it changes how we relate to one another.
What's so clear experience is that there was a purpose in you showing up selflessly. And I think that's the part that we often miss in community. It's like, what's in it for me, as opposed to what's in it for the person I'm called to serve. Jesus had friends, but he was also, he was like, I need y'all to learn this. Like, there's a reason why I am, and it's about other people knowing that I came, and other people understanding that there's a gospel truth. And I need that to be deposited, And earlier you were talking, Jackie, about discipleship. And I think we forget too that there's different types of community.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is for me to have my people. A lot of times there's nothing in this for me. I am pouring myself out because there's a purpose.
Yeah.
I have always loved community. There's something, it doesn't have to be a lot, but just being able to be with people around good food, it is just what makes my heart I get so happy. And then I get married, and I get married to a person where we move every 2 years, where community was really hard. And it was hard to get to know someone, and then they leave, or then you leave. And it was just this, for 16 years, really, we moved a lot, and I was unable to really establish roots. But when I realized it's because I knew I didn't have a lot of time. It made me say, Lord, show me who they are.
Oh, that's good.
And let me step into it quickly, because I don't have time.
Wow.
And so it changed my perspective of waiting for something to come to me and being like, maybe I have to step out and be that to someone else, invite someone over, whatever. And so it changed how I did community. And then some people will say, I meet you and you go deep real quick. I was like, because I don't know how much time I have, right? We're only on here for 2 years. And so I got to get to know you right now. So tell me about your parents, tell me, whatever. And it's like, not this.
They're like, oh, you're intense.
Exactly. And I was like, okay, Kirsten, simmer down. But the idea is, I think the Lord showed me that, you don't know how much time you have.
Yeah.
You know, I've never had the privilege of being in a neighborhood where I've been with them for the 15 years and I see all of our kids grow up or whatever. It's like, you got 2, Kirsten. Like, what are you going to do with these 2 years? Like, what? And even got to a point where my kids were so sick of moving and they're like, why do we make friends? Because I just leave them. I remember my oldest saying that. And I said, you make friends because you know that if we're going where God is telling us to go, there is someone that needs you and someone that you need.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have an opportunity everywhere you go to look and ask God, who is it? Show me her. Show me the girl. And I'm like, I would always say we'd move to a new city. I'm like, just give me one. One would be amazing. More than that is more than gracious.
We're supposed to be in unity. When we get together, we get to build each other up. And that's why I think community is so important when we're going through times of faith and times of believing and trying to move forward. For people to come alongside and to encourage us, that's huge. And then them joining their faith with yours, them praying, you praying together, man, when you do that, that's powerful. And so we are all supposed to do that for each other. And that's why I think it's so important. That's why I think Better Together is so important. We're a community here. When you join us and when you start texting and you start posting your prayers and stuff, we pray. And we join our faith with yours. And that's a powerful, powerful thing. And we believe for miracles in your life.
And I look at my life, I look at the people that I'm around, I don't see them a lot, but I can see little things of community in places that we have been. And I think it's because I knew I didn't have time. And so now we live in a place where we've been there and it's like, we might be here for a minute. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that look like? And the Lord sent me into this community and we have prayed for the past 3 years every Wednesday. And it wasn't people that I chose. It wasn't people that, I would look and be like, I want you. It was just like, this is who God is bringing together and we're going to meet. And we have prayed and seen the Lord say yes. We have prayed and seen the Lord say no. We have prayed for obedience. I mean, it was just the, like you said, the intentionality. So now I thought that was just going to be like a 1-year thing. You meet some people like, oh yeah, we're going to meet and we're going to, This is going on year 3 to the point where now I'm like, I'm busy every Wednesday morning. Like I have something planned. Like I'm getting back from this to go make sure I'm there on Wednesday morning. And it has become a habit. And I think that too has helped in making something intentional and letting God sit in the middle of it. And we were all just kind of like, okay, so hi, nice to meet you. I'm like, tell me about your mom, tell me about your dad, doing my thing. But I think to the point of bringing it back to how Jesus, I think there's something in community that we get that we cannot get on our own. Mm-hmm. I don't know where it is or somewhere where it's the idea of like the 2 people were holding his hands up. Mm-hmm. Oh, sure. As long as his hands were up, they were winning because he was so tired. And I just feel like I've been there and I know that these ladies have been holding my hands up when I couldn't. Yeah. And so I'm grateful. And so anytime I talk about community, it's hard because there's so much that keeps us from it. But I think when we step into it and we're able to be real and vulnerable, I feel like it's just the things that you're able to see and pray for, it's made all the difference. We grow with others. It's like all the body parts. Not one is more important than the other. I believe the body done the way that the body was designed, how God intended it to be, is a place where we sharpen each other, where we rejoice with each other, where we mourn with each other, where we become more like Him with each other. And I think done in true community, it is a beautiful thing.
I'm so curious what you're describing about going from city to city in 2 years, like diving in deep. Were you inviting them to be vulnerable? Like, were you like, I want to pour into you,
I feel like my invitation is always to be. I don't really have an agenda, except to be. And so very quickly you can find when you're meeting with people, whether or not it's I don't want to say worth your time, but if I have to pretend or put on something, it's kind of like, okay, there's a time for that, but that's not really what I'm looking for, what I'd like to spend my time doing. So my invitation was, hey, I have all these kids, we're homeschooling, they're here, they nap from 1 to 3. I'd love for you to come over and I'll order something, we'll make something. We just sit and just be and just talk.
Be an adult.
Can I have an adult conversation? Right? And that, I think that was, the invitation was to be, but also it wasn't necessarily we're going to go and study the word, but that always came up. It was just the invitation to be. And I feel like I was inviting them to what I needed. I needed that too, with other women who were just trying to do this thing called life in a way that was pleasing to the Lord. Just an opportunity to be. That's what I was inviting them to. And I feel like that's what, and then it just became that. And then it was just like a being time. And then we'd invite another woman to come and join. And then, it would just kind of grow from there.
Because I think what's interesting about, when I think about Jesus and the disciples, I'm thinking about him knowing more than they knew, him kind of being ahead of them, he's teaching them. So, in this day and age, again, with the culture of church and community, it's like get in your small group with your people. But there's so many different ways community takes shape. And one of those is, you're my people, we're sharing a season. Sometimes community is, I am receiving, or I have received, and I'm inviting you to be around me, to learn from me. It's not always like a peer-to-peer, like when you were talking about, loving your family. I think that's one of the natural places community takes place if we're intentional with it. You know what I'm saying? Like pouring out and gathering together, whether it's through traditions or family dinners or whatever, that we make community about this current day church thing, when really, his example was just walk with me. They gained community, but he was pouring out. He was just letting them come alongside. It wasn't, that's why I was asking you that question, because sometimes,
if you ask those women, they may see it differently than what I was actually trying to do. And some of those women have come back and said, when you were in Baltimore and you had us over and da-da-da-da, and I'm like, that wasn't my intention. Right? So
they're feeling like you invited them in and were kind of pouring into them.
Yes, but that
wasn't. You were like, we're together.
We're just doing life, Yeah.
And so I think, together.
So I never went out with the intent, but I do think there are times where, with the intention of pouring out to younger women, or, I think that does happen as well.
Building community is something that I'm on a learning curve with. You would think, with the fact that I've traveled all over the world and I get to speak at conferences and I get to be here on TBN, on Better Together, all these things, that I would just have this big circle of friends. And honestly, that's not really true. It's not natural for me, because I'm kind of an introvert, even though I seem loud on television. I'm actually kind of an introvert, and I'm really happy, like when I leave here, I'll go home and I'll scrape my face off and I'll put on my pajamas. And I just like to be quiet and to be alone, with my husband and my dog. But I understand now the importance of community. And so I've had to be, some people it comes naturally for. Like my husband, he could talk to anybody. He loves hanging around people. I've had to learn, but that's the great thing. The Holy Spirit has been given to you and I so that we can overcome the things that don't come naturally and reach out. And so I've started doing that. I put a little invitation in the neighborhood. So some of the girls, some of the other women in our neighborhood, we're going to get together and have an evening. And it doesn't have to be a Bible study at first. We're probably just going to have coffee and sit and talk and get to know each other a wee bit. And honestly, that's a bit of a leap for me, but I'm going to do it because that's how Jesus lived. So that's how I want to live.
How do you think vulnerability, you talked about loving people but protecting yourself, and you were talking about it being super important to not be in so that they would kick you out. But true community and connection does mean that at some point there is a level of vulnerability.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be stupid. You want to combine that with wisdom.
Yeah.
So what does vulnerability look like?
I think vulnerability has to be, I do think it should be tested.
Yeah.
And stewarded well. Yeah. Meaning, if I share something small, how do you steward that?
Right.
So that as I share things bigger, I can then trust you with more, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think if I share something minor and it's gossiped about or just not handled correctly, then that kind of gives me context.
Absolutely.
And wisdom for, I don't know if this is the relationship for this amount of transparency. or even like discipleship relationships where I'm discipling or pouring into, the level of transparency is really dependent on the lesson I'm trying to teach. It's not a transparency by virtue of venting or needing help or guidance, right, that I would give a peer or a mentor. And so I think even knowing the category or the reason for the relationship also governs the wisdom behind the reason I'm sharing what I'm sharing. And I've also kind of come to a point where I asked the Lord, what you want me to tell this person?
Mm-hmm.
And that might sound super critical, but I got to the point where I was realizing I'm trusting myself too much in who I trust. And so I'm looking at clues and I'm thinking, because I'm hyper vigilant and I'm hyper observant, I'm trusting in my own wisdom for how I move, and I keep hitting a wall. Like, it's still failing. And the Lord's like, yeah, because you're leaning on yourself. I need you to trust me in who I tell you to trust. And so I've also started to say, Lord, do you want me to trust this person? Nope. Yes. Nope. Yes. And it's like, sometimes he wants me to trust people I'm scared to trust.
Yeah.
And doesn't want me to trust people I'm willing to trust.
Yeah.
But
No,
I
that's
Well,
real.
think about his relationship with Judas. He had to have known that Judas was going to betray him. So he tasted everything that we walk through too, you know. But that's part of that forgiveness that he's so lovingly did for everyone, you know. But you know what I love about is when Judas came to him. The Bible says Jesus stood and said, "My friend." And Judas was his friend, you know.
And even at the Last Supper, when Jesus gives him the bread, I often think that was like choose now, Judas, you know. We've walked a long road together, you know. And I think Judas understood the meaning of if he took it, because it says the moment he took it, Satan entered him. But I think there is what you said, Jackie, about vulnerability and testing things. It's like, don't cast your pearls before swine. Don't take something that's really precious to you and give it to people who are just going to trample on it. And when you're too vulnerable too quickly, you know, that's when it can lead to hurt. But when you take those little steps and it's reciprocated, you know, then I think, you know, you can go a little further.
Yeah, we can follow Christ's example when it comes to forgiveness and trust. I'll say two things. One, Christ has not necessarily told us to trust everybody. He has told us to love everybody. So I don't have to trust everybody. Everyone isn't trustworthy. That wouldn't actually be wise. And so, but I cannot use the untrustworthiness of the people around me as a justification for withholding love. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not self-seeking. Love is not easily angered. Like, I have to obey. I cannot love God, who I cannot see, and then not love my brother who I do see. I cannot do it. 1 John advocates and completely communicates, if you say you love God, you must love other Christians. So I have to do it, okay? Forgiveness, again, God commands me to do it. We do not want to be like those, and I'm speaking to myself, we do not want to be like the people in the parable of the unforgiving servant who have been forgiven and then have the audacity to place burdens on other people and not forgive them. And so the strength and the power to forgive people who have hurt us will only come from reflecting on the fact that you've been forgiven.